Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. Today is the 18th day of March 2022. And my talk tonight is going to deal with the issue of the United States. Basically, its foreign policy dramatically changes after the war between the states, and then even more so, what we would call the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871. It seems as though I've looked at some things here and I'm just really blown away by what I've read this evening. The United States has been involved in just about every country in the world, either militarily or in coups or to basically just to throw the people out so that they can businesses that is American interest can do whatever they want to in that particular country. One example is that what took place in Guatemala. The United States has been in Guatemala quite a few times. And I've done a little short video on that based upon United Fruit Company, and this was in the 1900s. And I'll go into that more detail, but basically, the United States sent the Marines in a few times and actually was there for 20 years in some areas of Guatemala on the Mosquito Coast, involved in basically making sure that United Fruit had no issues with the people that worked for them. And the reason why simply is they didn't pay the people hardly anything. It was just basically poor wages. Our country has been involved in belligerently around the world. And there's no way you can say that we are the good guys because we aren't. And it has to do with simply is that corporatism began to take over, the insanity of corporatism. And United Fruit is one of those. And today, that company's name is no longer United Fruit, but it's called Chiquita. And what they've done with in that whole dimension of what I'll call the bananas, they've destroyed almost all the other varieties of banana except one that they can mass produce in Guatemala. The United States has been involved in El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, Panama. The only country, as far as I know, they've never been involved in is Costa Rica. We've been involved in Colombia. We've been involved in almost all countries in the world. In fact, I was looking up, as far as I know, there are three, what I would call three tiny countries that are basically insignificant. Well, that would be Andorra, which is in southern part of France, between France and Spain. Also Liechtenstein, which is basically a little small area, and Luxembourg. And probably one other country I'm trying to think of has been in Africa. We've been everywhere. And it saddens me that most people in this country have no idea. They just don't even know where these places are on the map of the world. They don't have any idea where these places are. So what really took place was simply is with the idea of the District of Columbia Organic Act, the United States ceased to be a country and became a corporation. That's what happened. They were what we call two forms of the United States of America, basically the capitalization of the United States of America, capital U, S, and an A. And then before then was the United was actually lowercase. States were high, uppercase, and America was uppercase. So there's what we call two different forms of situations where people were taught that we're still the states were in power, but in reality, that took place after the war between the states when the centralization of the government took place in Washington, D.C. So what's transpired since then is that the United States got itself involved very early in the actions of forcing its way upon other countries and saying we want to trade with you. And so, for example, this is I'll give you an illustration of this. Shortly after this has happened with the DC deal, maybe even before then this time, the United States sent Low, which was a military admiral in the U.S. Navy of the Asiatic Squadron to Korea. At that point, there was no North and South Korea. There just was a unified country of Korea. Um, Basically, they came there to search out what a vessel called General Sherman was a disappearance. And the United States, I think, sent five ships. A couple of them are pretty modern ships in that era that were more what we call battleships into the Bay Area, into what we call the area of what we call modern day Seoul, Korea. And they made it very clear that they didn't want to trade with the United States. They had no desire for it. And the reason why they went in here, you got to understand the attitude of the Americans with the U.S. Navy. They came in with five warships to basically come in to basically um, show us a significant force to these people in Korea that if you don't go along with us, we'll blow you back to the Stone Age. That was the attitude. And and these people were not interested in involvement in this. They just simply want to be left alone. They already had their trade partners. You see, the United States military is just an attaché of United States corporatism. That's what it is. The military does its battles in order to, it's not fighting what we call freedom, has nothing to do with freedom. It has to do with corporatism. That is, countries to um, basically to create an empire and to get cheap labor and to steal assets from a foreign country and use that power to get them out of isolationism. It's amazing how so much changed in America within 100 years. Because when we talk about supposedly we won the battles with Britain, but we didn't. We are just another quote unquote colony of Britain. And so, anyway, within less than 100 years, the United States now is already involved in war with other countries. And it continues on, it doesn't stop. And the military, well, the economic might of the United States begins to become the military might. We also see that we would call the enormous power of the banking industry and the steel industry and the railroad industry and other industries in this country began to become consolidated. And so they were no longer small mines or small mills of some type. They were now being bought up and worked as a whole unit, just like the country itself of America became a centralization part instead of actually a loose league or a confederation of states. And so what has transpired was a new particular policy, not only on the ground here in America, but also outward expansion. And so we see this with the Monroe Doctrine. We see how the United States gets involved in the Central America, which is the closest. We're involved in Mexico 2 or 3 times. We send troops into Mexico for any excuse with purging, general purging. We see this over and over again with the United States. The next thing you know, we're involved in World War One. We're involved in this whole situation in Cuba, claiming that the battleship Maine was destroyed by the Spanish. The next thing you know, the United States has already set up itself not only in Cuba, but actually was ready to attack and take over the islands that Spain had owned in the Pacific area, which was Philippines area. So you see this over and over is going on. And our foreign policy is about industry and corporatization and basically getting countries out of isolationism. And yet our country was before that was basically an isolationist country. And it was a lot easier for the United States because there were two major oceans that separated most of what we call Eastern, not Eastern, but yeah, Eastern towards Western Europe and to the West, a little bit less significant. And so our policy has been to simply is that we come in with a big stick. That was part of Theodore Roosevelt. Basically, we use our military, our white fleet, as he called it, to basically, if you don't go along with us, such and such, we'll force you. We'll force you. So many people say, for example, well, we don't want to be a part of this, like this whole thing, and they weren't given a chance. They didn't have the opportunity. You see, I always wonder about the small island country of Haiti because I believe simply is what's in Haiti is important. Why the United States has been intervention in that country many times. There has to be something there significant, either some type of oil, a mineral, or something of that nature that is there in Haiti for the United States to be involved in a small island country itself. And it actually sets up its own leaders. And as long as those leaders go along with the corporatism, fine, everything's cool. But if it doesn't, then guess what? United States Marines will be there. You see. And like I said, we've been at war with Spain. We've been involved in British Guyana, which is the northern part of South America. We've been involved in Argentina. We've been involved in Chile. We've overthrown legitimate governments. We put in our own people, and simply is we could care less about the citizens of that country. Think about that. So what a hypocritical nation this country is, and what it does, and what most Americans don't even know this, don't even have any idea because they're taught the opposite, that we're such a great nation and that we're founded on freedom. But I don't know if that's what's true anymore. I wonder what we're really like and why many countries hate us. They hate us because we're involved in their country. You see? Think about it. We've been in China. In fact, we know the United States with the during the early part of the Roosevelt administration, there was a talk of simply going to war with China at that point in order to get their oil. And the strategy simply by pushing by the Rockefellers, wanting that. And this is over and over. And you have to ask yourself, it has nothing to do about spreading any kind of freedom. It's about exploiting the people, the minerals there. That's why wars take place, to steal, to take. It has nothing to do with freedom. It's not anything to do with democracy, which democracy is a joke, because democracy has nothing to do with even being free. Democracy simply means mob rule. And I don't want to go long with this. I just basically, I'm going to do some videos here dealing with what I would call, what's the word I want to say? How we've been involved in so many countries, and most of this is for example, here. Let me show you this. I'll go there and I'll show you this part here. This is just a little thing, the incident in Korea in 1871, and eventually as I've heard a little bit expedition. What was the purpose of this? And it was simply is to these people, the Koreans, objected for them to be in their seaport. They didn't want them there. And I was never taught this, never told anything about this, never told anything about the District of Columbia Organic Act, you see. And so when you look at this whole part here with Wikipedia, this is amazing how the United States was involved in a small country. And as far as I can tell, simply um, is a good possibility simply is that they did destroy um, the ship that came into their country, that is Korea, when it came into Seoul, such and such. They're looking for the General Sherman disappearance and an attempt to convince the Koreans in opening up trade resolution. Well, you don't have to force anybody. Why would you force it with military guns shooting at you? They're going to, such and such. But this is gunboat diplomacy, you see. And so eventually, they disregarded this. They didn't want to go along with this. Basically, the Admiral Lode said there's a few worthless articles, such as the 3 cows, 50 chickens, and 1,000 eggs, in an effort to de-escalate things. Americans rejected the offer instead of a punitive campaign for launching after the commanding American man failed to receive an official apology from the British that they felt they were owed. You see, and so the dynasty government at that time said simply is we're not going to do any more. They weren't going to be opening up to trade. And so they sent their ships down the river, the Han River, in order to teach these people a lesson. And eventually, the military weapons that the Koreans had were inferior. And eventually only 3 soldiers actually lost men compared to over 200 men, as far as I know of here. And they changed the history to name the such and such islands. I mean, the battle of the forts and stuff like that. All of this was simply changed and painted as a picture of, they started it such and such. They didn't want us to come in their country. Well, correctly so. They should have said no. Why didn't we, quote unquote, respect their view? No, we didn't respect their view because we're gonna force it down their throats. And yet, this is interesting. Here's what it says. It's simply the fighting lasted only 15 minutes, where 243 Koreans and 3 Americans were killed. That's it. There were 10 wounded and 20 Koreans wounded, according to these statistics. But anyway, the attitude was still the Korean deputy commander was among the wounded who were captured. The U.S. hoped to use the captives as a bargaining chip to meet with local officials, but the Koreans refused, calling the captives cowards, and Lowe was told that he was welcome to keep the wounded prisoner, but the Americans released the prisoner. In other words, the attitude simply is we're bigger and stronger than you, and we're gonna run over you. And so it just, anyway, it's amazing, and how belligerent we were with the Japanese at one point. And in reality, it's Japan, in the way that what I understand, what I'm reading tonight, is that Japan eventually saw the United States enormously becoming involved in the Pacific theater, involved with Korea, also with themselves, also with other countries actually taking some islands like Guam, and eventually to the point simply is that Japan says, well, we need to get on the act we need to get in this act of doing what these people are doing. Now, this is all before or during the time the powers in Europe are involved in Africa. And all these, we can name the countries that France was there, England was there, and then we're talking about Africa. Germany got involved. Belgium, Congo was taken over. Enormously belligerent towards these people. And when these people refused to work, they just cut their hands off and their feet off. Destroyed their lives. They didn't mean anything to them. They were there to take. Most people don't understand the country before it became well, I would say it was one time called Rhodesia. Rhodesia stood for Cecil Rhodes. Cecil Rhodes was involved in the expedition of what was a part. I keep on thinking it's Botswana, but it's not Botswana. It's I'll get it. But anyway, the country eventually went through a civil war in 1975, and the British were involved. We were involved in Angola, along with the South Africans, um, that area. Um, and so the sad part simply is that um, this has been going on for over 100 years. This is asinine. And the same thing is supposedly going on in Ukraine is all about this crap. And then we paint the propaganda in this country paints as though Ukraine is just they're being attacked. We don't even know if they're being attacked at all. This could be circulating propaganda. I understand. I read something the other day, just recently, that the Russians sent some trade. I think it was oil that was supposed to be stopped in Maine, and they refused to ship the dock in Maine. That is the state of Maine, United States. So what we've got here, folks, this is serious business. Is what I'm seeing, is that um, the United States itself wants war. In fact, all the Western countries want war now. You see, and we're being led down a road that we really eventually are not going to be able to back out of. But I don't know if this is again all propaganda, because the United States just needs to stay out of people's backyards. Period. You don't go over there to save people. You go over there to get what you want. That's what you do, and you use this propaganda in a way, humanitarian propaganda. That basically, you're saving people. In reality, simply, it's just a smoke screen. That's what's going on. And I'm not coming from the leftist or the rightist perspective. I'm just looking at it in a true way. And what I see simply is just all a bunch of lying and deception. And the American people are gullible. They have no idea what their government is doing to other countries. And they could care less because they don't even know where these countries are located. They couldn't find them on the map. I know, because I remember taking a class, Russian history and Russian history and German history, and most people didn't know where some of these countries were located or important cities in those countries. So, but anyway, I just want to basically share this information to others. I feel I need to share because simply as I'm interested in truth, and this is part of what I would say simply is truth, and what we're encountering right now is that why are we doing this? But this whole thing started. Now remember, we used to have a good relationships with Russia ever since '89 or 1990, early '90s. The whole idea of the East Germany Wall, the Berlin Wall fell, and then eventually what we call the relationships with Russia began. We go over there. In fact, I know that we had in my own one time at my church I was involved in. I don't go to church anymore, but we sent a group of people to Kiev, Ukraine at that point, and we also I think someone went to also Moscow, and to spread the gospel, so to speak. But we were actually giving them aid. And then later on, the Obama administration begins to do a game, and they start playing games. And like you used to have G8 countries meet together. It's no longer G8 because the 8 country was Russia. And so they're no longer a part of the process. So the West has decided they don't want anything to do with Russia. So it's the G7 economic summit. So see, this is what it's doing. It's a part of isolationism, and then painting them as the bad guy. You see, and you have to understand your news agency here is not showing you. They're not sharing the truth. They're just giving you a form of propaganda because these people don't have any guts about them. They just simply get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they could care less. You see, money is all they care about. So, but anyway, I'm digressing from the program here. So I appreciate you listening, and we'll always tell the truth because the truth is what changes people's lives, and we are supposed to be about truth in all matters of our lives. Thank you for listening. I wish you a good night. Take care.